Yo, my name is Dominique. I run a software company called Appaveli, and I am going to take you through a journey of what it's like to be a solo app dev, an indie dev, an entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it. So, let's get wired in. First, I start with a fresh cup of coffee. Look at this coffee brew. Oh, this is so good. I have to start every morning with coffee. I wouldn't be able to function. And look how fresh this cup of coffee is. Look at that. Oh, it's so fresh. So fresh. Then I look at my list, what I have to do today, which is listen to Software Engineering Daily, read propaganda news, work on the football field design, podcast ideas, and so forth. So, as you see here, I listen to Software Engineering Daily every morning. It's probably one of the first things I do. I usually listen to this while I'm making a cup of coffee. It's a really good podcast about software engineering. So I highly recommend this podcast, especially if you want to start off just learning something new in your field. Then I read the New York Times. I read all the propaganda on the front page, but I mainly go to the business tech section. As you can see, they have a really good technology section. So I read the New York Times, and I read other sources too. I don't just read the New York Times. I believe in reading multiple sources throughout the day. I'll kind of glance when I take breaks, see what's going on, see if I miss anything. Then once I, finish that, I might listen to more podcasts. Who knows? But I really do like the New York Times. As you see here, I really enjoy reading InfoWorld, especially if you're a software developer or if you're in the technology field. You should definitely read InfoWorld. I like to read this in the morning, so I like to start off my day just reading the news and seeing what's going on while I'm drinking a fresh cup of coffee. So I do all this before I get into the heavy stuff, which is either coding or design. So keeps your brain going. It's really good to start off your day, stimulating your brain, even with some propaganda, because a lot of news is propaganda, even the tech stuff. But it's good to see what's going on. As you see here, what's new in Angular. So now I look at my software design document for my football playbook that I created. I create a software design document to keep track of the progress of the project. It gives the overview. I recommend every solo dev or software engineer to keep a document to keep track of, your project, especially when you're doing multiple projects. And eventually, I'm going to add mock-ups, screenshots, more details about the project, things that change, scope creep. And here you can see I am updating the document with what I have to do, and I add on as each day, or some days I have to add 5 or 6 things to do, and I don't know if I can get through them all in one day, but I usually set a date of when I want this completed, and that's where I will place the images. And this is the software design document. I recommend every project have one. Here I'm brainstorming podcast ideas, list of movies, list of books to read, trying to come out with new content for my podcast, which is Wired In with Appaveli. So subscribe to the podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts, Wired In with Appaveli. Now, on to the fun stuff. So here it's just a blank canvas, green. You can see the rulers, so I can mark the lines, at least accurate. Try to be accurate. What I'm designing here is a football field for a playbook. Now, it's not going to be a fancy football field. It's not going to be grass textures. So, as you can see here, I'm using Photoshop. I thought I was using Illustrator for a second, but I'm using Photoshop. And all I'm doing is creating just a line, a white line. I'm creating three lines, 3 or 4 lines, and then I create a long line to look like a football field. I'm not finished with this yet, but this is what I'm working on. This is kind of like a rough sketch of how I want it to look. This is not going to be the final design. This is not going to be the final design. I know it's not. It's very tedious what I'm doing. Design is not like my favorite thing to do. But when you're a solo dev, you have to do it. And even though this can be tedious, but the reward is, this is really rewarding once you finish it. So all I'm doing is creating white lines and measuring, duplicating layers. I really just want to get to the coding part. So here's my design document to go through what I've completed today. And if everything is completed, I just drag everything down to complete it. Everything on the list that we've talked about is we've completed. And that's it for this episode. Life of a solo dev, life of an entrepreneur with Appaveli. Stay tuned for more. I'm out.